Morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Um, chapter 45, verse 1. Chapter 45, verse 1. Yehuda, as we were discussing last week, Yehuda speaks very forcefully on behalf of the brothers that Yosef now says a whole plan that Binyamin has to stay and maybe the father will come, whatever. And Yehuda says, whoa, this is not okay. Binyamin has to come back with us. Our father is desperately waiting for him to come back. What will be with our father if we don't bring Binyamin back? And Yehuda says, I promised my father I would bring my son back. I would bring his son back. Now, chapter 45, verse 1, Yosef Yosef was not able to hold back from all those standing over him. Vayikra, and he called, Hotziu cholish me'aloi. Take out everyone from me. V'lo amad ishito, and no one stood with him. Bisvada Yosef elechav, when he revealed himself to his brothers. So this pasuk is very interesting. What does it mean he wasn't able to hold back? And why did he tell everybody to leave? What's going on? So the Ramban and I should just read the next pasuk also. Verse 2, Vaitenes kolo bivchi. Yosef let us voice out with a cry. Vayishmu Mitzrayim, the Egyptians heard. Vayishma beis Paro, and the house of Paro heard. And this is when he reveals himself. Ramban pasuk aleph. Lo yachol Yosef lisapek l'chol nitzavim alav. So he starts off with Rashi. Lo yachol lispol shu mitzrim nitzavim alav v'shomim she'echav mispaishin bivado lahem lashon Rashi. Rashi says the pshat is Yosef is actually fully in control of the situation. And he realizes that the brothers are about to be terribly embarrassed. And he knows, and we know from the reaction, they do get terribly embarrassed when he reveals himself. He's the one that they left for dead or sold or whatever it was going to be. And now they desperately need his help. And it's obviously extremely awkward. He knew that the brothers would be terribly embarrassed, and he didn't want to have any strangers in the room where the brothers were so embarrassed. So he wasn't able to bear all these people being in the room. What does it mean, all these people being in the room? All these Egyptians in the room. And it didn't mean like he had like his emotions were overflowing, according to Rashi. It means he's sitting there thinking to himself, I can't tolerate humiliating my brothers in front of all these Egyptians. So he says, get everybody out of here. And it's just Yosef and his brothers in the room. That's Rashi's pshat. For Avram Amar, Lisapek, Lispol, he couldn't tolerate all those standing over him. Tamo, Achiyetsu Kol Anitzavim Alav, Vuhutzrach, Likro Lotziam. Actually, the way the Ibn Ezra seems to understand it is he couldn't hold back. He has like this emotional overflow, and he can't hold it in until everybody gets out in a normal, orderly way. So he said, get everybody out of here. Everybody out of here. It's like almost like an emergency. I need everybody out right away, because he couldn't, in order for it to just calmly ask for privacy, he couldn't hold it in. He was about to explode. Explode not in an angry way, explode just in an emotional way. And of course, that's the next verse, that he let his voice out with a cry. That's how the Ibn Ezra explains it. Yosef was Unclus understands Lisapek means he was no longer able to hold himself. He was no longer able to be strong. In other words, he had been holding in this desire to reveal himself to his brothers for this whole time, and he couldn't hold in the desire anymore. So whether it be Rashi's pshat is he couldn't tolerate the Egyptians being there for his brother's humiliation, whether it be the Ibn Ezra's pshat, he was like about to like burst basically, whether it be according to Unclus, he just couldn't hold back the desire to reveal himself anymore. But the Ramban says, what I think the pshat is, Shahayu Shami Beis Paru Min HaMitzrim, Anashim Rabim, Yichalu Panav Limcho Levinyamin, Ki Nichmru Rachameim Al Tachanune Yehuda. A fascinating pshat. The Ramban says, Yehuda is saying a real sob story. I don't want to go through all the psukim now, but Yehuda basically says to him, look, my father has been through so much. What happened with his other son, and now Binyamin, and he really didn't want Binyamin to even go. And then who knows what it'll do to my father if I don't come back with Binyamin. And everybody in the room starts saying to Yosef, come on, let Binyamin go back. In other words, there's like the butlers in the room, the advisors, they're all like, oh, come on, just let the boy go back. Come on, be nice to get that old man back home. Everyone's driving him bonkers. And he could no longer deal with all the people berating him or imploring him. And therefore he called to his servants, Hotziu kol ish nachrim alai. Get everybody, I want all the commenters out of here. I'm just going to speak, just me and these brothers. Vayitzu me'alav, and they left. Say seme'alav, nasanas kol b'vchi. And then once the observers left, Yosef let out a great cry. Vayishmu Mitzrayim v'anshe beis para mutzoyim me'alav. And the people of Egypt and all of Paro's retinue that had just been, taken out of the room, all heard. That's what it means that the Egyptians and the house of Paro heard. Normally you read the pasuk and it sounds like Yosef gave this like gargantuan cry, heard, from one end of the world to the other. That's like what it sounds like. The Ramban says that what it means is all these Egyptians and aides, etc., had been in the room. And Yosef said, I want them all out. So they're like waiting in the lobby. And Yosef gives a big cry. So they heard him in the lobby. Okay. I think I'm skipping about 5 lines. For Tambot saw the reason the Ramban says that Yosef had them go out. He knew that the sale would come up when he's talking to them. He didn't want the Egyptians to hear that his brothers sold him. A fascinating shot from the Ramban. Yosef's got a plan. Yosef's plan is that the family is going to come live in Egypt. We know that story. And that's what he's going to say very soon. We saw him to the brothers. There's no way when he reveals himself to his brothers that the sale is not going to come up in one way or another. The reputation of the entire family, including Yosef, by the way, is going to be down the tubes if the Egyptians hear this story, because these are not loyal people. They sold their own brother. So can we count on them? Can we count on them to live in our land and be loyal citizens, even though they're outsiders? Can we count on them? We can't count on them. So actually, whereas according to Rashi, Yosef is being sympathetic for the personal humiliation of his brothers, according to Ramban, he has a much more maybe political concern that if the Egyptians hear about this, they won't want to take in Yosef's brothers, and they might not be so positive disposed towards Yosef anymore either, because he's coming from a family that's like treacherous as far as they're concerned. So just a number of pshatim here as to what's going on when Yosef clears the room. Okay. Verse 3. So now what are the magic words that Yosef says to the brothers? Vayomer Yosef elachav ani Yosef. Yosef says to his brothers, I am Yosef. Ha'od avichai. Is my father still alive? So his brothers were not able to answer him because they were frightened of him. He's in this powerful position. They've done this terrible thing to him. The famous question on this pasuk that's really mind-boggling is, what in the world does he mean when he asks, is my father still alive? Is my father still alive? They've been talking about your father all this time. So different ideas show up in the Mefarshim. Let's start with the Sforno. Sforno on pasuk Gimel. Ha'od avichai. Efsha shalomes midagaso alai. You kept on talking about what will be with your father. What will be with your father if you don't send Binyamin back? How could it be that my father is still living after what he must have been worrying about me all of these years? So you could understand it in different ways, what the Sforno was saying. It could be that it's a little bit sarcastic. This is how many Mefarshim understand what Yosef is saying, that it's like a little bit of a sarcastic thing. In other words, yeah, you're so worried I have to send back Binyamin because who knows what will happen to your father? Hi, I'm Yosef. How's our father doing with that one? That's one pshat. Um, another pshat would just seem to be almost, is it even possible that he's still alive? Okay, let's see the Kliyakar. Kliyakar on Pasuk Gimel. Haorav Ichai. Afal pi shekvar amrulo shuchai kamuvan mikol tever Yehuda. What do you mean? Of course he's alive. Yehuda's been talking about him the whole time. Mikol makom chashav Yosef ulay amrukin kadesh yikamu rachmal val zaken. Vul yogram lo misa kinafsho kshur benafsho. Okay, inshallah, shenis haorav Ichai. So the Kliyakar says maybe they were lying. Maybe they were just trying to figure out what button to press to get the man to let them send Binyamin back. Maybe Yaakov's long past. Maybe Yaakov couldn't survive what happened with Yosef. Maybe that's why it's in their head to say, because that's what happened with Yaakov. So he thinks maybe they're lying to the viceroy of Egypt. Who knows? So he says, okay, I'm Yosef. Now tell me the straight story. Is our father really still alive? Very interesting. The Kliyakar says his intent is just want to make sure, is he actually alive? But they understood that he was cutting at them. I'm Yosef. Is my father still alive? He doesn't say, is our father still alive? He says, is my father still alive? So whereas it says the Kliyakar, he's intending a factual question. Their understanding of what he's saying is a sarcastic rebuke. He's not your father, because if you related to him as a father, you would have never done the terrible thing of selling his son. So how's my father doing? Your father is certainly not. Now, he didn't mean that, as is clear from his continued discussion with them, that he's not holding things against. Remarkably, he's not holding things against them. But that's why, says the Kliyakar, they can't answer because they're terrified of him. Why are they terrified of him? The reason they're terrified of him is not just he revealed himself as Yosef. According to the Kliyakar, they think he just said something terribly sarcastic to them, and of course has a lot of legs to stand on. So, according to the Sforno, it's probably a little bit of a sarcastic question, like how's our father doing after what you did to him? According to Kliyakar, he just thinks maybe they weren't on the level with the viceroy of Egypt. So we discussed this morning different ideas and what it means that Yosef couldn't hold back anymore, why he cleared the room, different ideas about that as well. And we discussed two different ideas as to what he's asking when he asks if my father is still alive.